Welcome everyone to this Creativity for Good webinar. My name is Thomas and it's good to see a lot of familiar faces. And today we have our show producer as well, Andy, who is joining us, who you'll be seeing in the chat and helping us along this little journey. So I'm really excited about today. It's kind of like when you're in school and you had a substitute teacher, because you're going to watch a lot of commercials. We're going to have a lot of time to discuss what's good, what's great, what's bad. And I really want you to engage as well and share your ideas, your opinions in the comment section. And one of the things we can do just to kick this off is I'd love to know a little bit more about all of you. And even though sometimes titles, this is just a good way of sort of getting a bit of a sense of who's in the audience. So maybe you can just share a little title or whether you're into marketing, sustainability. So in that way we get the comments going. But anyways, as I said, today we are going to focus on creativity. And I think at this point in time, creativity is probably the biggest driver of change right now. The do-good space, I feel, has evolved dramatically over the last couple of years, from being a very niche subject to being much more mainstream. And so what creativity does is that it obviously differentiates your message. So today I'll be sharing about 12 hacks that hopefully you can use in your day-to-day work with sustainability, impact, creativity for Goodvertising. Call it what you want. And I think from the very onset, my focus has been on creativity. I started out as a young copywriter. My first book, Goodvertising, was a way of reimagining what advertising could be at the time. And good to see you there, Lawrence. Thank you so much for joining today. And obviously I have been continuing that mission over the years. It was interesting, a couple of years, or actually about a decade after I wrote Goodvertising, one of the guys interviewed was David Droker, who at the time was at Droker 5, now part of Accenture, and he was my jury chairman when I joined in Cannes. For the Cannes Lions. It's a big global advertising event where we judge sustainable development goals. I've also been judging many other shows, D&D, which is another global award show where I was jury president a couple of years ago. So creativity runs through what I love doing. And as you saw as well, we have this monthly podcast with Headache that you just saw. For those of you who joined a little bit earlier, saw a little snippet of. So good to see all of you getting to know each other a little bit better. But as I said, I have lots of content for you here today, and I hope you'll like, maybe hate, maybe feel that you want to discuss some of these amazing videos. Because we need a new narrative right now. And so the first thing I want to talk about is something I recently started called Climate Punks, where I interview lots of different people from the climate space. And one of the people I really look forward to talking to was Chris Jordan. Some of you might recognize this image that Chris took back in 2004 at Midway Islands. And these were albatrosses suffocating ocean plastic. So Chris was one of those photographic artists that brought everybody's attention to this issue of ocean plastics. And when I chatted to him in our series Climate Punk, it was so interesting to hear how a lot of his work was focused on activism and in fact hating to see what we are doing to nature. Then through the program, another one of his images we started discussing, which was this image that he took on southern Chile. And I looked at it and I thought, wait a moment, Chris has this activist background. I wonder what the message is. And I thought maybe it's climate change, maybe it's rising oceans. But he said something that was even more interesting. This was a message of love. because there is no hidden message in it besides that the southern Chilean nature is beautiful. So we should just look at it and appreciate it in awe. And I think that's a really, really powerful message, that maybe what we need right now is to reimagine, rethink the stories that we're telling as sustainability space. And this was Chris's message, that maybe we just need more love. And definitely a lot has changed. And obviously a big topic these days is greenwashing. And it's interesting to see that when time passes, things doesn't always age that well. And I can definitely say that in my first book, Goodvertising, I did have campaigns that definitely, with today's eyes, probably would be viewed as greenwashing. And even if we look at work or brands that we celebrated about a decade ago, such as Innocent, I'm pretty sure that these fake grass-filled cars would probably provoke legislators in the European Union. So again, we need creativity to reimagine these stories that needs to be told. So where do we start? I want to start with one old ad that goes all the way back to the 1960s, I believe, this little ad. Again, I said I was a copywriter, so obviously I'll begin with showing you a copy ad. But at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls Royce comes from the electric clock, reads the headline. I don't know if any of you have an idea about why I bring up this ad and why I think this ad is good. I wanted to share this ad because basically, how would David Ogilvy, who penned this ad, know anything about this little insight? He knows that because he'd obviously been driving this Rolls Royce many, many times. And I think if we are to create amazing creative storytelling, we need to engage ourselves fully in the topic, spend time, question, go there, experience all of these things, because else we won't be able to tell the right stories. And this goes across climate, social issues, etc. And that brings me to our first commercial today. And as I said, as I play them, feel free to share in the comments. And again, it's so great to see a lot of you introducing you to each other here. It's great to see all of you. So keep that going as well. So the first hack I want to share with you here today is around insights, because I believe insights are really an emotional superhighway. And by the end of the day, advertising works, is effective because it triggers our emotions. So I'll share this first little ad with you, and then let's have a little bit of discussion about insights as an emotional superhighway. So let's view this first little ad.
Tim, my boyfriend Tim. He's so tall, very tall. Nothing fits, giant. Eats a lot, cooks a lot, chops a lot. Etsy. Can I afford custom? Yes. Extra long apron.
I'm Tim. Custom gifts for all budgets. Etsy has it.
Great. You're probably saying to yourself, what the heck does that have to do with Goodvertising and advertising for good? But what I wanted to share here is really that insight. I hope you sort of felt the connection with this little ad, as some of us has been through the holiday season and obviously been stressing a lot about what gifts to get. But I think this ad really sort of speaks to us. We feel spoken to. I'm a tall guy as well, so I definitely feel a lot like I'm like Tim. Already in Goodvertising, I did talk about insights as a driver of change. And let me just read a quote that I shared that good old Bill Bergback, he wrote many, many years ago. His definition of insights, which I really love. Nothing is so powerful as an insight into human nature. What compulsions drive a man, what instincts dominate his action. If you know these things about a man, you can touch him at the core of his being. Of course, a few years ago, so very man-focused. Let's focus this women as well. But it's this idea that we feel spoken to. And for me, there's a clear distinction between an insight and observation. An observation is something stereotypical, such as maybe women like shopping or something that is just a sort of general observation. Insights is something that we kind of feel that it's just us who might think this, or something that we've been thinking about. So it's this sort of like direct emotional talk. And another campaign that springs to mind when we talk about insights is some of you might remember anti-smoking campaign that's been running years and years and years called Truth. And the insight was really strong, because how do you get young people to think twice about cigarettes? The thing is, when you're young, you don't really fear death, so that's definitely not going to help you. And so the insight that they picked up was, in fact, to say that what if they take one rebellion, because young people feel rebellious, and then turn it against something, and they turned it against the cigarette industry. So they had this whole campaign where they urged young people to rally and revolt against the cigarette industry. And it's been one of the most applauded, awarded campaigns for more than a decade, all based on this one strong insight. So before you begin your work and your deep dive into whether it's ocean plastics, climate, food waste, whatever it might be, think about those topics that might touch people, that might be an emotional bridge, something that you've been thinking about. Maybe you feel bad about waste sorting, or maybe the thing is that you don't waste sort when other people are not looking. Whatever it might be, that can be a strong little insight you can build your campaign around. So that's our first little hack here today. And again, as Andy keeps reminding you, feel free to share comments about the ad that you just saw. But let's go on to the next little thing that I want to share with you here today, which is really about discovering your story like a documentary filmmaker. The thing here is that so often in the world of advertising, what would happen is we would sit in our white rooms and we'd try and come up with a storyline around maybe a cheeseburger, maybe around a running shoe, and we'd use our imaginations. What's really powerful about thinking more like a documentary filmmaker or journalist is that in a lot of the very effective work that I observe in this space, it's about real life. So it's about going out there and discovering the stories, finding those stories that can truly matter to people. So let's have a look at one good example here that goes some years back from the UK.
There was this magical air of like a pixiness about him, and everything was a big adventure, whatever he did.
When Lynx approached us to talk about tackling male suicide, this was hugely exciting. Brands like Lynx can make all the difference in the world, because this is, at its very essence, a cultural issue.
As a brand for guys, I feel that we have a responsibility to address issues like this that affect guys all over the UK.
This was a highly reactive campaign using real-time data to pull trivial topics live from the press and social media, showing all the things we're more than happy to talk about to highlight the one thing we're not. One idea, hundreds of headlines, hundreds of topics bigger than suicide. In London, people couldn't get enough of Starbucks red cups, and a new like button on Twitter became a trending topic across the UK. Every 2 hours, we created a new headline, because every 2 hours, a guy in the UK will kill himself. These ads got people's attention, including a host of celebrities that lent their support. We asked people for one day to join us in talking about this bigger issue instead.
Started a national campaign to raise awareness of male suicide with men. And this campaign was run in association with the men's grooming brand Lynx, and I think we should pay tribute.
In fact, this one campaign did more to raise awareness of the issue than anything in the last 10 years.
Amazing again to see how Lynx, in this case, do this media hijacking really, really well, and also how they basically pick up on a fact, tell a real story about this sad fact that men are actually very, very effective at killing themselves. So not only do they pick up on something that they've observed out there, they also tell us something that, at least for me, was a fact that I didn't know, which is a very, very important other fact that we'll revert to a little bit later in this webinar today, is that a lot of the stories we hear in this space are, again, the same and the same and the same. So think about how you can go and discover. One of the things I typically do is, if I'm working on a client, let's say on ocean plastics, is I look through the papers, I browse the news, and try and look for those small news articles that touch on some of these issues. I remember one thing going back all the way to when Brazil was hosting the Olympics, and there was this story from Rio that the sailing boats was actually slowed by or getting slower times because of all the garbage outside the beaches of Rio de Janeiro, which was a really, really interesting fact that I'm sure could have been a very, very powerful story around ocean plastics, and how maybe if one was organizing ocean cleanup or whatever, also could support the athletes in a new and innovative way. So the third one that I want to share with you here today is a really, really simple one, but it's something that I see a lot of brands, a lot of creators in this space keep forgetting. And one really easy way of seeing that is, in fact, that most of us in the industry still unfortunately talk about people, citizens, as consumers, as this is their only ability, their only function is to consume. So this is again about how to truly understand how these people live. And I know that we are incredibly busy always in the industry, but I think really not just doing your research and talking to your research agencies, but take a much more anthropological approach. And I'd even encourage creators to go out there and engage with those communities. If you are doing stuff around climate, go to the forefronts, go and experience victims of wildfires, go and actually understand those issues on the ground. That's the only way that you can really do great, amazing work. I want to share one piece of work here that, interestingly enough, was from Cannes last year. And as some of you might have seen, I was quite disappointed about the lack of climate focus in Cannes last year. But one category that actually showed quite a few surprises was the business-to-business category, where I did pick up this piece of work.
Earth, the world's most urgent IPO. We are Earth, a truly global company.
O Pacto Global da ONU e a B3, a Bolsa de Valores brasileira, lançaram hoje o Planeta Terra no mercado de capitais, que aconteceu em um evento na sede da Bolsa. Pacto Global.
Pacto Global. A iniciativa é do Pacto Global da ONU.
Our stock may go up or down, depending on what's happening to the planet.
Thank you.
Earth, it's all of our business.
But this story, basically what they've done is that they've IPO'd, they took nature to the stock exchange, they put financial value on our ecosystems. And this was a campaign that was done for the United Nations development goals. So really to open the eyes of business leaders to the value of nature. So again, thinking about what matters to business leaders and sort of putting dollars to nature. So you'll have to see that when we share you the link. But again, it is to reiterate this fact that think about your target group, what they care about. Try and understand how they think. This is really a pivotal point I want to drive home here, as you can see with the two earlier points as well. And it's something that's really close to this mantra of nature conservation, where there's always been this talk about first trying to get people to experience nature, go out there, walk in nature, hear the bird sound. Then it's sparking people's curiosity. So you're starting to drive knowledge, getting people to understand nature better. And then finally what tends to happen is that you start loving nature. And when you love something, you want to protect it. So this is often how one can take people on this journey. And it's something that I often try to do in my work as well. When we've been working across the world, we're doing dry toilet projects all the way down in Southern Africa, in Mozambique. And me and the creative team was there. And one of the things we really encouraged the client to do was to join us in these walks around the slums to really understand the circumstances that people live in. So it's a really, really pivotal point. Again, if you have any questions, if you have any remarks, if you think it's a great video or not a great video, let us know in the chat. The next one I want to talk about is something that I probably experience most in this space, is that most advertising is absolutely just a completely waste of money, in the sense that we're preaching to the people who are already believing in our cause. Think about how much climate communication that are already targeting people who are already passionate about the climate, who are doing whatever they can. Or again, the same thing goes with a lot of non-profit communication, where you are trying to speak to those donors, those people who are already contributing to causes already. So try and get out of that comfort zone and try and open your eyes towards new target groups who might be resistant, or who might actually be one of those who are, if this was an election, those who might think, oh, should I go for A or should I go for B? So let's play this next little ad that is from France.
Over the last years, automotive industry spent millions on ads trying to sell electric cars to everybody. But today, only 7% of people are ready to buy one. The remaining 93% still believe they need more autonomy, infrastructures, or to live in a big city. Long story short, they need something different to be convinced. As the leader in electric vehicles, Renault wants to prove it's accessible for everybody. So, in 2020, we created the first 100% electric vehicle city. Where? Here, in Happy.
Dans l'Ariège, il y a tout un village qui va se mettre à la voiture électrique.
Ça se passe dans le village d'Happy.
A village far from everything, like really far. A village where driving is a necessity and electric seems impossible. Yes, we chose the remotest village in France. Because if it's possible here, it's possible everywhere. So, we brought all-electric Renault Zoe to replace every single car of all inhabitants of Happy for 3 years. And voila! This village officially became the first city on Earth driving only electric cars. But after 6 months of driving only Zoe, what changed? Nothing. Patrick still goes to work every morning and comes back every night. Sylvie still makes her groceries at the supermarket.
Et voilà.
Marie still brings her children to school every day. Gilbert still gets lost, even with a GPS.
Après 150 mètres, tournez à gauche.
Happy is still the same. Except for one thing, or two. By following their life on TV and social medias, we made Happy famous and helped convincing many French to switch to electric. But not only. And voila. That's what we call a happy ending.
Example of what happens when you dare to speak to somebody who might not agree with you in the first place. And I absolutely love this little narrative that also have done really, really well in award shows, and also just in general in terms of actually getting people curious about electric vehicles and the shift towards different means of transportations. So I think what's so important with this point is really to understand how we can engage in new topics when we want to interact new target group, because quite often what happens is that we simply go for the insights that people already know, or we target things that people already know. And I think this demands a lot more hard work. And that's also why I wanted to begin with this little narrative of trying to find the insights, the emotional little bits, trying to walk in people's shoes. Because when you do that groundwork really, really well, and then when you dare to think about a different target group, I think this is where if you're selling a product or service, you can expand, you can grow. If this is about driving change and impact, again, this is when we are not only wasting basically our money on speaking to people who are already agreeing with this, but again, that we're driving more sustainable behaviors across new target groups. And thank you for that comment, Lawrence. And yes, you're right. I think Lawrence is bringing up a point around authenticity, and yes, again, it obviously needs to be authentic from the behalf of the brand. We won't be spending that much time on the topic of authenticity today. We will do that in other upcoming webinars, but of course, this is also about being authentic. So let's go a little bit towards tone, voice, style, storytelling, how we get that right. Because a lot of the work in this space, because it is about quite serious topic, often ends up being quite doom and gloom, black and white, serious male voice, all that stuff. So how can we turn even things like the climate emergency, poverty, and other things into something that is maybe fun, entertaining, that takes a different approach from a storytelling point of view, because that can be a really, really effective driver of change as well. Because most of the time, it's about sticking out. And if every other brand is giving you a bad conscience, maybe it's about finding a different way into it. This is quite an old commercial, but it's still one of my favorite when it comes to using fun. And also what I like about this, it's kind of also a little bit talking to a broad target group of folks, from those who are converted to those who might just be curious about joining and living more sustainably. So let's roll this little next ad.
You are a good person. You spend time with your family. You work out at the gym.
Come on, push.
You conserve water while showering. You like nice clothes. You give to charity. You recycle. You drive a Prius, but you use your bike when you can. You enjoy the occasional distraction at work, and you always send a card on Mother's Day. Always. But there's a part of you that tells yourself that you're not so good, that you could be doing more, that the world is falling apart at the seams, and all you've been doing is yoga. One day you see that the rainforest is being destroyed at a staggering rate of 32 million acres a year. That's the equivalent of one football field every 78 seconds. You feel bad, angry, guilty. You've been apathetic for too long. You want to do something about it. You must do something about it. Well, this is what you're not going to do.
I quit!
You're not going to quit your job, leave your family, get on the next flight to Nicaragua, take a bus to the edge of the jungle, then hoof it across rivers, lakes, and streams on a quest to the very heart of the rainforest.
Take me to the heart of the rainforest.
You're getting closer. You're almost there. You have arrived.
You're not going to ingratiate yourself with the local tribesmen, go to great lengths to earn their respect and trust.
No.
It is around now you realize you're living out the cliché gringo fantasy of becoming an honorary native and leading the resistant forces. But screw it. If they could do it, so can you.
I'm gonna save you! This guy comes over here, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna pull a zapping, that's right through him, right over here.
You're not going to coordinate and occupy the rainforest movement, realize it's hopeless, summon the power of the gods, lead a revolution against the deforesters and their multinational employers in an apocalyptic once-and-for-all battle to save humanity, only to awaken 2 days later in an El Salvadorian hospital with 2 toes missing on your left foot.
Siri, I wanna go home!
Hobble out of Central America, up through Mexico, across the Sierra Madre, where you break down, have your first cigarette in 4 years, accidentally start a wildfire, killing off the endangered species that once served as your occupational distraction, finally make it back home, only to find you've been replaced at work by a guy named TJ, and that things at home are not what they used to be.
Okay, that stopped a little bit too early, but no worries about that. Obviously, this is from the Rainforest Alliance, and what they want to do is encourage you to follow that little Rainforest Alliance label called Follow the Frog. Really curious to hear what you think about this commercial. I think it sort of challenges a lot of our stereotypes. It challenges a lot of the ways that we think about these topics. Even the very end of the commercial, for me, is a bold move by the Rainforest Alliance, who actually recently did follow up to this one. Yeah, Lawrence, good point. Yeah, can someone turn that into a feature movie? They should. The director behind it has actually done a feature film recently. Right now, my brain can't really pick up his name, but I can share that at a later point. The director. Great, yeah, Jerome, Luciana, thank you so much for those comments as well. And fun is a good drive. Even when we talk about behavior change, fun can be a good reward. I remember some years ago, the sunscreen brand in South Africa wanted to get young children to obviously use sunscreen. And I don't know how you felt about sunscreen and sun cream when you were kids, but I absolutely hated getting it on my skin, and I always hated when my mom was doing that. So what they did was they created this water slide, but instead of water, they were applying sunscreen. So the kids could go up there, they could use the water slide, and then they would get sunscreen on them. So a clever little way of using fun to reward people for the right behaviors. And Mark got a very, very good point of view there, in the sense that it does collaborate with the viewer, and not necessarily the business putting the pressure on the viewer, which I think is also a very, very good point here, and something that when I spoke about insights, is one of the first points I made, is something that insights quite often can do. There's quite a few insights in this Follow the Frog film that feel that we are spoken to and not spoken at. So I want to talk about this next point because it's again one of the things that I'm quite frustrated about when I look at the advertising impact space in general, and also when I judge awards. It's so often we keep being told the same things over and over and over again, whether it's food waste or recycling or whatever, instead of taking a new spin, trying to find a new angle into the story. So always think about if there's something new you can tell. When we saw earlier with the links at Bigger Issues, yes, they found an angle where it was about male suicide, something I didn't know, something that stood out, something I wanted to talk about. I often talk about this analogy of commercials being a bit like sitting around a dinner table with friends, and you're engaging in conversations, and quite often, if you think about it, the one who often captures and leads the conversation at that dinner table is the person who speaks about something new, who comes up with a new angle to the conversation. And that's exactly what you also need to do in the commercial space as well. So, and if you can't do that, if that's not possible, if you can't find a new angle on it, then maybe try and see if you could come up with a creative twist to the storytelling. I think this is what this next ad have done quite well. So let's see this next ad.
The Mentos paperboard gum bottle was made to be recycled. There's just one problem. Only 32% of Americans recycle. So we came up with the only logical solution. Hire an actual real animal trainer to train raccoons to recycle for you. Introducing the Mentos Raccoon Recycling Force. A group of raccoons we had specially trained just to recycle Mentos paperboard gum bottles. They're already in our trash, so this just makes perfect sense. No raccoons were harmed in the process of training. In fact, they ate a lot of expensive treats and were treated like royalty. Do not attempt. With training done, the Raccoon Recycling Force hit the streets of California. They were really out there, picking up and recycling Mentos paperboard gum bottles. I mean, wow. They don't even have opposable thumbs. This pilot program was a major success, with 75% of the raccoons recycling. It could have been 100%. Daisy. But that's still better than the only 32% of Americans. So, Mentos wants to take this nationwide. Text us where you think the raccoon should head next. The Raccoon Recycling Force. Saving the world one tiny, furry paw at a time.
Yeah, quite curious to hear what you think about this one. Obviously, what it does in a clever way is that it almost makes us laugh at our own behaviors. And again, remember, this is targeted the US, where the recycling structure is almost non-existing. So getting Americans to maybe I could be doing it. Maybe I could be at least as effective as Daisy. So interesting enough, combining humor, creativity, and coming up with an interesting storytelling about recycling. Something that I think at least is a new an interesting story that captivated my mind and made me engage with this little commercial. And staying with the tone and voice and getting that right, I think one thing I observe quite a bit as well is this, and this is already on the briefing stage quite often in the strategy stage of campaigns, is that brands and nonprofits feel almost always inclined to take the climate road, talk about sustainability, talk about social issues. But quite often, why don't we just make them normal? There's so many behaviors where instead of trying to convince people, just make it be about fitting in. One campaign I want to share with you today is from Uber, and it's a campaign that ran a couple of months ago in the UK. And as you know, Uber is this car platform, and they've launched a new service. So let's just have a look at this little ad.
Hiya.
Hi.
Thanks for waiting. I'm Gina.
Hi, Gina.
So I'll just jump in then, shall I?
Okay.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, this is my one.
Trains, now on Uber.
Normalizing the behavior. And I think a lot of brands would probably feel inclined to obviously talk about environmental efforts and do it the green way, blah, blah, blah. Not at all. They come up with a fun, little insightful storytelling around a lot of the experiences that I think, for those of you who tried, and Uber can definitely recognize. So making behaviors seem normal is quite important. I remember some years ago when we did some work around bicycles in Copenhagen, and what we were supposed to do was, in fact, to encourage people in Copenhagen to use lights on their bicycles. Obviously, during winter it's quite dark, and so we came back to the client and said, okay, we solved the problem. It's basically not an advertising challenge. What needs to be done is that you just pass a legislation that says you can't sell a bicycle without light, as probably you wouldn't be able to imagine getting a car without headlights. Obviously, our client was shaking her head and thinking we were crazy. So we came up with another solution, which was actually creating and twisting the bicycle signs, because as you will see in most countries, the crazy thing is that the bicycle signs don't have lights on them. So we went in, tweaked the public bicycle signs, adding a little red light on the back and a yellow light on the front. So why would we ever have done a street sign that is actually not showing the correct behavior? So normalizing behaviors. Now on to thing that is, I think, becoming more and more important, which is that a lot of the work I see in this space, whether it's diversity and inclusion or whether it's climate, often becomes quite alienating. And I think there has been this tendency over the last couple of years to scream louder and louder and be much more activist, so saying no to this and that. And sometimes, and maybe this is just me, but I really do feel that the sustainability movement should be an inclusive movement, not an exclusive movement. It shouldn't be no, it shouldn't be pointing fingers at climate deniers, etc., just because we feel that we know better. So the next one is not a film I want to show you, but it's a little print ad that goes all the way back to the days of United Colors of Benetton. Very, very simple. And what I like about it is that it's not preachy. It makes you think. It makes you be part of the storytelling. And I really do feel that right now, probably most hard-hitting activism you can do is to be much more inclusive in your storytelling and not to alienate people. And I think this is especially true for those of you who are watching from the US, where obviously it's a very divided political landscape, and so I think thinking about how you can make some of these topics much more inclusive is, I feel, very, very important. Some of you might also remember Procter & Gamble did an advert called The Talk, a beautiful little story about not talking about the flowers and the bees, but how it is to be a young man or woman growing up in the US and having to be faced with race. We still have about 11 minutes in front of us, and we still have a couple of ads. As I said, we will be seeing a lot of work. We will be discussing a lot of work here, and at the very end of it, we will have a bit more time for questions as well. So this next point I want to make is around how you can work with some of these topics, moving from something that touches you personally, as we talked about with insights and emotional insights, to creating a much, much bigger systemic change. One of the tools that I work with is this one that I want to share with you here today, which is called the ladder. And basically, it's a brainstorming tool that I love to share with the creative teams. So basically, either beginning at the bottom or the top of the ladder, because quite often when we engage with some of these topics, climate change, etc., people often end up taking global perspectives and talking about forest fires, etc. But how can you make climate change, for example, emotional? In this one, as examples, I just talk about fashion and the challenge of fast fashion, and what you could be able to do in the space of fashion. And obviously on the emotional and physical level, it could be launching a fashion charity program for less fortunate school kids to feel and look great. This insight that when we are dressed, when we feel that we look good, we perform better, we socialize much better, and all the way up to a much more global issues, such as, for example, advocating for a global take back program, which obviously one could do if we wanted to, as we're seeing more and more now with, for example, PET bottles, and in other areas where there are take back programs. So this is just a little brainstorm tool to think about how you can move and take some quite abstract topics as climate change and make them and turn them into something that each and every one of us can touch. So let me just quickly show you two examples of that. First up, all the way down to a film that's been that's quite some years on its back, but let's just have a look at the first one from Dove. So this one goes all the way back to the early days of Dove, which has obviously been one of the longest running purpose campaigns that we have seen. So obviously beginning at the very bottom of the ladder, but let's go to a next ad called Solar Pulse from this year in Cannes that looks at the systemic challenges.
A court in France has ruled that the French state is liable for inaction on climate change.
Activists and experts said the law simply does not address the emergency.
The government's inaction on climate change is a death sentence for us all.
Adopting new laws against climate change takes far too long.
Prêt à voter, the first book with draft laws ready to be voted. Solar Impulse Foundation, a nonprofit environmental NGO, identified 50 ecological innovations against climate change, and with the help of lawyers and jurists, transformed them into 50 draft laws ready to be voted. They assembled them into a one-of-a-kind book, Prêt à voter, Ready to Vote. 577 copies were printed and sent to the French National Assembly. One to each of the 577 MPs, simply asking them to pick any ready-made draft law and propose it for a vote.
Our goal is to help them doing in a few months what usually takes several years.
A campaign raised public attention.
Prêt à voter vient de sortir.
Prêt à voter. Cette initiative que vous avez lancée pour accélérer la transition écologique.
I want to come to heads of states and say, look at the solutions that exist today.
Il y a un nombre incroyable de propositions et vous les présentez devant le Parlement français.
3 laws were chosen to be voted on.
Les députés voteront pour ou contre le projet de loi d'accélération des énergies renouvelables.
And finally,
l'Assemblée nationale a adopté le projet de loi.
3 laws adopted. 1 on geothermal energy, 1 on floating solar panels, and 1 on sustainable agricultural energy. 9 laws under review. Are ready to vote in preparation for the European Union. Prêt à voter, the book to accelerate the fight against climate change.
What an amazing initiative when you think about it, something that definitely could be applied on a number of issues, and obviously a campaign that did quite well at the award shows, but obviously, as you can see, also did really, really well in creating impact in France across issues that are often quite complicated to understand. So this is how you potentially can use the ladder. The last bit of today, I want to spend talking about impact. It's something I haven't covered that much in the early part of this webinar, where we have focused much more on storytelling and how to find the right stories, find the right angle, and secondly, obviously, find the right tone of voice to get your message across. So how do we measure impact? What are we satisfied with when we talk about impact? I think is one of the key questions that are being discussed again and again in our industry, and something that having judged many different types of awards, both in marketing and sustainability, is a very, very important conversation to keep focusing on. What is it that we want to see? I like to see stuff that scales, that has potential to scale, not that one small, cool local effort that does great change for local community. Obviously, that is applaudable. But right now, obviously, with the challenge at hand, scale is obviously important. I want to share this next little campaign with you because I thought it was a really, really clever use of resources, and it's something that has had a proven impact. And this is also one of the winners in the Sustainable Development Goal Alliance jury about 3 years ago in Cannes. So let's have a look at this next commercial.
Education in India, I call it a national emergency. There are 80 million kids
who are on the streets. They should be inside classrooms right now. And this is not a problem that only the government can solve. Because I want to give these kids exactly the same educational standard that the so-called prestigious elite India gets. And this is the Open Door Project. Millennium Schools is a chain of schools. We educate 35,000 children. If you walk into a Millennium School at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll see it buzzing. But post 2 o'clock, the entire infrastructure falls silent. And then we decided that why don't we open our doors to kids from the community, from the neighborhood. These kids who are coming in the second shift take full advantage of the opportunity that's been given to them. This is the story of a sex worker's child who converts his mother's clients into teachers. Top national NGOs joined us, and that's how the mission got the momentum.
So Teach India has an access to volunteer teachers. The Open Door Project has access to volunteer schools. And when the two join hands, we have a perfect circle of knowledge.
This is just the beginning. I would want that the Open Door Project reaches out to thousands of underprivileged children across the country.
So this is nothing short of a revolution. And the impact that India is going to see with this is not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen 5 or 10 years later.
An impressive initiative and something that definitely could be copied in many other countries than simply just India. So we've been talking a lot about ads all the time. My next point is really don't make ads. And what do I mean by that? I think way too often we rush into creating commercials or story doing projects where we feel the initiative speaks for itself. But there's one definition that I often like to put in front of clients to challenge them when we are to choose a communication challenge. And I talk about openings. Openings as the times, places, and situations when the audience will be most attentive to and able to act on the message. So let this little definition, take the time to read this little definition again, because what I want to get at is quite often we go with 30-second commercials, we use influencers, we use all these traditional media tactics instead of actually understanding the small things that can create a lot of change. So, for example, quite often, if you're working for brands in the FMCG sector, you're operating in a busy retail environment, what can you do there? Like, I mean, if you think back at Innocent Juice when they were doing their little knitted hats on their juice bottles, it was an initiative to support senior citizens in the UK to drive funds towards heating, etc. But it's just such a dramatic image. These little knitted hats and the plastic bottles was something that stood out in retail. So the next film I'm going to show you is, I think, a really brilliant example of an opening. So when you want to talk about food waste, when is the right time to do it? And how can you actually help people on their journey to cut down on food waste? And that's exactly what this little next opening does. So let's roll that. Simple yet powerful to use openings. So how I typically use this thinking and this little hack is obviously to ask the creative team to begin with that. It's a very, very good way of sort of challenging the creative that you have on the table and come up with something that might be and require a much smaller media budget. Obviously, you can see this is a much more 360 campaign, but could have been applied in a much more simple way as well. So let's look at our little 12 hacks here as a little summary before we go into the Q&A sessions. We talked about insights as the emotional superhighway. We know that emotional advertising works, and this is a way to touch people. Secondly, don't go there and invent stories. You don't need to be a storyteller per se in the classic sense of inventing a story, but go out there, storm into filmmaker. Walk in people's shoes, really try and empathize, go out there as an anthropologist and really try and understand how people live, the fears, the dreams. Don't preach to the converted. Very, very important point. Is something I've observed too much in this space. Try and strike a different tonality, use humor, use a different tactics. So turn disaster into fun, tell me something new, find a new angle, be more creative, see if there's a normal twist to it. You don't need to go down the environmental or social route. Use inclusivity as a real way to drive activism. Think about the ladder to go from personal issues to systemic change. Impact. Think like an impact entrepreneur. We didn't talk about that one, but we will share that example with you when we share this video recording. And lastly, think about openings.